The neighbor who watched I had finally moved out of my parents' house. After years of college and living with roommates who left dishes in the sink for days, the idea of a small, quiet apartment all to myself felt like freedom. The building was modest, a little worn, but the rent was reasonable and it was close to work. It seemed perfect. The first few weeks were blissfully ordinary. I unpacked boxes, arranged furniture, and enjoyed the kind of solitude I'd only dreamed about. At night, I would sit by the window with a cup of tea, listening to the hum of the city that felt distant, yet comforting. I told myself I was finally in a place where nothing could touch me. Then, the first package arrived. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I hadn't ordered anything online in weeks. It was small, unassuming, left at my door. I picked it up, examined it, and found nothing inside but a simple card. On it, someone had written, "You looked beautiful today." My stomach dropped. I laughed nervously at first, thinking it was a prank, maybe a neighbor with a quirky sense of humor. But the unease settled in quickly, gnawing at the edges of my peace. Over the next few days, I noticed small things. The hum of the building felt different. Footsteps outside my door, faint but deliberate. A shadow in the hallway that lingered. A second too long. I told myself I was imagining things. I told my friends. "It's probably nothing," I said, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. But deep down, I knew I wasn't imagining it. One night, I returned home from work later than usual. The hallway was quiet, dimly lit, and I sensed someone was there before I even saw them. I slowed my steps. A man leaned against the wall near my door. He looked like any other resident. Average build, unremarkable face, clothes that didn't draw attention. But the way he watched me, like he had memorized my every move, made my skin crawl. "I didn't see you there," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He smiled, not a friendly smile. A calculated, knowing smile that made my throat tighten. "Hey," he said casually, "just enjoying the evening." Something about him didn't feel casual. I hurried into my apartment, locking the door behind me, but the uneasy feeling followed me. I started checking my locks obsessively. I double-checked the peephole every night, convinced I would see him outside, watching. Days passed. Small things escalated. Notes slipped under my door. Packages I hadn't ordered, sometimes empty, sometimes filled with things I couldn't recognize: a single glove, a used coffee cup, a key to a lock I didn't have. I called the police once, but they shrugged it off. "Maybe it's just a prank," they said. But I knew it wasn't. I started sleeping with the lights on, curtains drawn tight. I avoided the window when I could, and if I went out at night, I took the long route to my car, hoping to avoid whoever it was. My friends noticed I was changing, more anxious, more withdrawn. I didn't tell them everything, not the depth of my fear. How could I explain that I felt like I was being hunted in my own home? One night, I was in the kitchen making a cup of tea when I heard it, a soft, deliberate tap at my window. My heart raced. I froze. The city outside was quiet, but there it was again, a slow, rhythmic tapping. I walked slowly to the window, keeping my back to the shadows, and then I saw him. Standing there, across the small courtyard, perfectly still. Staring at me. I couldn't move. My tea spilled, forgotten, on the counter. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, lights on, phone in hand, scrolling through contacts and emergency numbers. I called my friend Jenna at 3 in the morning, and her voice on the line was a lifeline. I explained what had happened, trying to keep my panic in check. He's just there," I whispered, trembling, "watching me." Jenna suggested I stay with her. I hesitated, my pride, my need for independence, but eventually agreed. I packed a bag quietly, leaving no trace of my plans. When I walked out, I glanced back at my apartment one last time. Across the street, in his car, he was there, watching, waiting, A chill ran down my spine. I stayed with Jenna for a few nights, planning my next move. I knew I couldn't stay. He had memorized my routines, my habits. I had to disappear, at least temporarily. I contacted a realtor in a different part of the city and arranged to move into a new apartment under the radar. I changed my locks, updated my addresses, and cut off any predictable patterns. The day I left, I walked to my car as casually as possible, carrying only a small bag. I didn't look at him across the street. I didn't want him to know I had seen him. I drove to my new apartment, the adrenaline still surging, the fear settling like a heavy weight in my chest. For weeks, I thought I was safe. The packages stopped. The notes ceased. Life slowly returned to a semblance of normal. But the feeling never left me. Even now, years later, when I walk past my old neighborhood, I can't shake the memory of his eyes, the way he watched, the knowledge that someone had studied my life, silently, for weeks or months. The most terrifying part wasn't just that. He had been there. It was knowing that he could still be anywhere, watching, waiting. And I would never forget that. The stranger at work when I first started working at the coffee shop downtown. I didn't expect it to change my life. It was supposed to be temporary, a stopgap job while I figured out what I really wanted to do. The café wasn't glamorous, but it was cozy. Wooden tables, warm lights, the faint hum of indie music. Customers came and went, and most of them were forgettable. Students with laptops, businessmen grabbing their caffeine fix, regulars who ordered the same thing every day. And then there was him. The first time I noticed him, he blended in like everyone else. Mid-30s, clean-cut, well-dressed in that casual office worker kind of way. He ordered a caramel latte. He smiled politely. His voice was low, calm. Nothing about him set off alarm bells, but he came back, again and again. At first, once a week, then every other day, then every single morning. He always ordered the same drink, always sat in the same corner. At first, I brushed it off as routine. Some customers are like that. They find comfort in familiarity. But he was different. He started asking questions. Not the usual small talk, not how's your day, or busy morning. He asked where I lived, if I walked to work, what time my shifts usually ended. I laughed it off, gave vague answers, and tried to steer the conversation back to coffee. But he remembered things. Little details. If I mentioned liking a certain pastry, he'd bring it up days later. If I mentioned being tired, he'd say, "You were up late last night, weren't you?" The first time he said that, I froze. I had been up late the night before, but I hadn't told anyone. Not online, not in passing conversation. How could he have known? I laughed nervously, brushing it off as coincidence. But it didn't feel like coincidence. Then came the texts. One night, after closing the shop, I walked to my car. The lot was dimly lit, shadows stretching across cracked pavement. My phone buzzed. An unknown number. "I saw you leave work today. You looked sad." My blood ran cold. I scanned the lot, my heart racing. Nobody. Just the hum of streetlights and the sound of my own breathing. I jumped into my car, locked the doors, and drove home, trying not to cry. I didn't sleep that night. I kept checking my windows, convinced I'd see him standing outside. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, maybe a wrong number. But deep down I knew. The next morning, he was at the café, sitting in his usual spot, sipping his caramel latte, smiling at me like nothing had happened. My hands shook as I rang him up. He looked at me with that calm, steady gaze and said, "You shouldn't look so stressed. You're safe when I'm around." I wanted to scream. From that point on, he was everywhere. If I worked mornings, he was there. If I worked nights, he was there. If I stepped outside to take a break, I'd catch him standing just a little too close, watching me, pretending to be on his phone. The other baristas noticed, but they brushed it off. "He's just a regular," they said. "He probably just likes you." But it wasn't just liking. It was obsession. The texts kept coming. Always from an unknown number. "Nice red sweater. Today. I love how your hair looks when it's tied back. Don't walk alone tonight." One evening I stayed late to clean up. The cafe was quiet, lights dimmed, my coworkers already gone. As I mopped the floor, I heard it, a faint tapping on the front window. My heart stopped. Slowly, I looked up. He was there. Standing outside, not smiling, just watching. His face inches from the glass, his eyes fixed on me. I dropped the mop and ran to the back, fumbling with my keys, locking the door between us. My hands shook as I dialed 911. By the time police arrived, he was gone. They took my statement, nodded sympathetically, but I could tell they didn't take it seriously. "Maybe it's just a misunderstanding," one of them said. But it wasn't. The next day, he wasn't at the cafe. I thought maybe it was over. But when I got home, I found an envelope taped to my door. Inside was a photo of me, taken from across the street. My breath caught in my throat. He had followed me home. I couldn't take it anymore. I confided in my manager, who promised to keep an eye out, but there wasn't much he could do. The police filed another report, but nothing changed. The man was smart, careful. He never touched me, never threatened me directly. Just lingered at the edges of my life like a shadow I couldn't shake. The breaking point came one night after closing. I was walking to my car, keys clutched tight. In my hand when I heard footsteps behind me, slow, measured, matching mine. I quickened my pace, so did he. My chest tightened. I broke into a run, fumbling with my keys, and practically dove into my car. As I slammed the lock down, I turned my head, and there he was, standing just feet away. His face lit by the dim glow of the parking lot, smiling faintly. I floored it. Tires screeching, heart pounding, I drove straight to the nearest police station. I filed another report, this time demanding something be done. They promised patrols near my apartment, suggested I change my number, vary my routines. But they couldn't arrest him, not yet. I realized then that if I wanted to be safe, I couldn't just wait for them to help. I had to disappear within 2 weeks. I quit my job at the cafe. I blocked every unknown number, changed my phone, moved to a new apartment across the city. I didn't tell coworkers where I was going. I deleted my social media. I erased myself. For a while, it worked. No more texts, no more packages, no more tapping on windows. Slowly, I started to breathe again, but the paranoia never left. Every time I walked home, I checked behind me. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Years later, I still do. Because the thing about stalkers is, they don't just vanish. Even when they're gone, the memory of them lingers. And somewhere deep down, I still wonder if he's out there, waiting, watching. The late-night hiker. I've always been a night person. When most people are winding down, I come alive. The world feels different after midnight, quieter, rawer, like you're walking through some secret version of reality no one else gets to. See, that's why I hiked at night. The trail near my apartment wasn't popular. It was a narrow path winding up into the woods, a mix of gravel and dirt, surrounded by dense trees that swallowed sound. During the day, families and joggers filled it. At night it belonged to me. Just me, my flashlight, and the hum of insects. I told myself it was peaceful, but deep down, I think I liked the danger. Hiking alone, in the dark, knowing no one else was around, it made me feel untouchable. I'd blast music in my headphones, sing to myself, breathe in the crisp air. For months, nothing ever happened. I thought I was safe. Until that night, I was halfway up the trail, around 1 a.m, when I noticed someone behind me. At first, I barely paid attention. Trails are public, after all. Maybe someone else just had the same idea. But something about him unsettled me. He kept his distance, close enough that I could hear his footsteps, far enough that I couldn't make out his face. I sped up. So did he. I slowed. He slowed. No matter what I did, he mirrored me. My chest tightened. I told myself not to panic. Maybe he was just another hiker. Maybe I was imagining things. But then, on a bend in the trail, I stopped and stepped aside, pretending to tie my shoe. I waited for him to pass. He didn't. When I looked up, he was just standing there, 20 feet back. Not moving, not saying anything. Just staring. My mouth went dry. I forced a smile, waved awkwardly, and muttered, "Go ahead." But he didn't move. He just stayed there, frozen, like a shadow carved into the dark. Finally, I stood and kept walking, my legs trembling. His footsteps started again. That was when I realized I was alone. No cell service, no one else on the trail. Just me and him. The trail curved deeper into the woods. And that's when I saw it. A small backpack sitting on the side of the path. At first, I thought someone had dropped it. But when I got closer, I froze. On the side of the pack was a tag. My name, written in bold black marker. My heart hammered in my chest. My name. My backpack didn't have a tag. This wasn't mine. Yet here it was, waiting for me, like he had placed it there. I didn't touch it. I ran. The trail seemed endless, my flashlight beam bouncing wildly as I sprinted. Behind me, the footsteps pounded the dirt, steady, relentless, never speeding. Up, never slowing down. Just there. Always there. Branches clawed at my arms. My lungs burned. Every time I looked back, I saw him always the same distance away, never closer, never farther, like he was letting me run. Like he was enjoying it. When I finally reached the trailhead, I gasped in relief at the sight of my car. I fumbled for my keys, dropped them, cursed, and scrambled to pick them up. My hands shook so badly I could barely unlock the door. And then I saw him. He was already there. Standing by my car. Silent, motionless, his face hidden in the shadows. I froze. My legs felt like concrete. He didn't move. Didn't speak. Just watched. With a burst of adrenaline, I ran back up the trail, away from him, away from my car. I ducked into the trees, hiding behind a thick trunk, trying to muffle my ragged breathing. I waited, praying he hadn't seen me. Minutes passed. Then I heard it. Slow, deliberate footsteps on the gravel. Crunch, crunch. He was walking. Back up the trail. Hunting me. I stayed hidden, barely daring to breathe, until the sound faded into the distance. Then I crept out, doubled back through the trees, and sprinted to my car from the opposite side. I jumped in, locked the doors, and tore out of the lot so fast I nearly spun out. I didn't stop driving until I was miles away. When I finally got home, I collapsed on the floor, shaking uncontrollably. My phone buzzed. No service on the trail. But now the text came through. An unknown number. "You run fast." I never hiked at night again. For weeks, I was on edge. I checked my locks constantly. I jumped at shadows. I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, watching. I filed a report with the police, showed them the texts, but they couldn't do much. The number was untraceable. One night, I woke to a sound outside my window. Tap, tap, tap. I froze, my heart slamming against my ribs. Slowly, I pulled back the curtain. There was nothing there, but taped to the glass, barely visible in the moonlight, was a photo. A picture of me. On the trail, running. I moved apartments 2 weeks later, changed my number, bought new locks. But no matter where I go, the fear follows me. Because somewhere out there, I know he's still watching, and he's waiting.